It's primary day in 5 states today. Now, President Biden campaigning in key swing states as former President Trump decries what he calls election interference. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Iris, good evening. What are the candidates up to today as voters cast their ballots?
Good evening to you, Jack. So as primaries unfold today in Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Kansas, and Ohio, neither Trump nor Biden is going to appear in any of those states as both of them have clinched their party's nominations. Instead, President Biden is on a 3-day campaign swing to the Sun Belt, mostly to court Latino voters. Here's what President Biden said about a rematch with Trump in Nevada today. Watch.
Last week, Donald Trump and I clinched the nominations. We're going to beat him again. Because I feel really good as I go around the country, not a joke.
While President Biden won nearly 60% of Latino voters back in 2020, recent polling has shown that Trump is expanding his standing with Latino voters as more and more of them are increasingly responding to Trump's policies on immigration and the economy. And Trump, meanwhile, today was railing against a New York judge's ruling to make him post nearly $500 million in bond next week. And Trump says that's even before he gets to appeal. And Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "I would be forced to mortgage or sell great assets, perhaps at fire sale prices, and if and when I win the appeal, they would be gone. Does that make sense?" And Trump's lawyers have said that Trump is now unable to post that bond, as Trump says that most bonding companies haven't even heard of a bond of that size, let alone being able to afford it. Jack.
Well, $500 million is really an unusually large bond. Iris, tell us more about the primaries tonight and what are we watching for as both Trump and Biden have already become the presumptive nominees?
You're right. So most of the drama is expected to unfold mostly in the down ballot races. For example, in Ohio, 3 Republicans are in a fierce fight to try to unseat a Democratic senator in a state in which Trump has won in the past 2 presidential elections. So tonight's primaries could help determine the chances that Democrats have in maintaining their razor-thin majority in the Senate. Jack.
Iris, thank you for that report. And stay tuned tonight for our special coverage of the presidential primaries in The Nation Decides 2024, where we'll examine the top candidates' policies as the election results flow in. Join NTD's Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer for a deep dive into the election's most pressing issues as voters cast their ballots across the country. Catch all of the action and the results live tonight starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And as more battleground states across the country are holding their presidential primary elections, we look ahead to some of the main issues that could influence voters come November. We welcome to the program Dr. Jeff Gunter, a medical doctor and former ambassador to Iceland, and Mike Leon, an NTD News contributor, policy and strategy director for the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, and the host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. We're now joined by Mike Leon and Ambassador Jeff Gunter. Thank you both for joining.
Great to be here.
Now, Jeff, in Trump's hush money case in Manhattan, the U.S. Attorney's Office waited to turn over thousands of pages of documents that DA Alvin Bragg asked for months ago. What does this say about the strength of the case, and do you think it's likely to begin before the election?
You know, the reality is this is just government gangsters. The whole thing's illegitimate. When it comes to President Trump, we watch the false impeachments. We watch the false indictments. And this has nothing to do with justice. This has nothing to do with the law. This has nothing to do with the Constitution of America. This is desperate people trying to do desperate things to stop Donald Trump from being the next president of the United States. And he will get there. He will succeed. And everything that they do will ultimately fail. It's desperation, plain and simple.
Now, Mike, what's your response here? Do you have the same thoughts?
I don't have the same thoughts, but I will tell you on this level for Dr. Gunter for a second. He's right about the New York case. The New York case is the weakest of all of them. Everyone knows this. It has the allure of being politically motivated because it's a misdemeanor at best. The statute of limitations may have expired on some of these charges. So I will agree with him just on that bare bones basis is that this New York case probably of all of them is the one that probably shouldn't have been brought in. And we kind of know why it's being brought because It's a DA that, again, he ran and Letitia James both ran. These are campaign ads. This is not Mike Leon saying this. These are campaign ads that they ran on, getting the Trump campaign.
Now I want to move on here. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a week away from announcing his VP pick. Mike, who among his contenders on his short list would best resonate with voters, and who's he polling more voters from, Biden or Trump?
Well, Jack, we spoke about this kind of a little bit last time. I mean, first off, again, and I'll say this again, if you really want to make a serious dent as a third-party candidate, which no third-party candidate has ever made a successful dent, you can't pick a current quarterback in the National Football League to be your running mate. You just can't. I know Jesse Ventura is a former governor, obviously in Minnesota. He ran with the Reform Party. He's been able to kind of dive into the muck and be able to, get himself elected amongst the establishment candidates on the Republican and Democratic side. He's obviously an option. Nicole Shanahan, again, a former attorney, no real, government experience. It just happens to have a lot of money and cachet. I don't think that would speak to RFK's base as he's trying to, kind of buck the trend of what billionaires are able to do in the political game. So I haven't seen anybody kind of emerge as his top VP pick that would at least get people excited to potentially those independent voters that are going to be crucial this election cycle to vote for him and not vote for either former President Trump or current President Biden.
And Jeff, what's your response?
I agree partially a little bit. I think the reality is he's going to suck votes from Joe Biden, and the big sucking sound that we're going to hear in November are people not only who realize that Joe Biden is cognitively disabled, unable to lead this country, but those are the people who are going to view JFK Jr. as a somewhat an alternative to Donald Trump. But most importantly, we have to remember the election of 1992 and H. Ross Perot. Everyone remembers that H. Ross Perot got about 19% of the vote. Everyone remembers that Bill Clinton won that election over Bush 41. So we cannot underestimate the impact that RFK Jr. is going to have. And remember, he's for shutting down the border. He's an anti-vax guy. So I don't think he has anything to offer a potential Trump voter, but someone who's just had enough of the government gangsters, had enough of a president who's cognitively disabled, who's sick of the people coming across the border and everything else. They might look at him, but let's face it, why not go with the real thing and why not go with Donald J. Trump, who has a proven track record, as opposed to someone who has a proven recognizable name.
President Biden's traveling to Nevada and Arizona over the next 2 days, two competitive battleground states. In a memo Biden's campaign released yesterday, he said that they're looking to Florida and Texas. Now, these states are more conservative. According to the Real Clear Politics polls, Trump is leading in all 7 battleground states. Mike, why does Biden have his eyes here on Florida and Texas?
I have no idea. I mean, Jack, I was just talking about this the other day with Pachi Valencia from Epoch Times there, and we didn't understand the Democratic Party has pulled out of Florida for all intent and purpose. They have not campaigned a lot here. They didn't even have their Democratic primary here. They've shifted money to other states where they feel that they can make a dent. So I'd be shocked if the Democratic Party really starts to spend money. I don't know why President Biden is making waves here, because if you just look at the numbers from 2016 to 2020, the Latino vote down here in the blue counties, those numbers have dipped more for Trump. From Hillary Clinton 2016 to Biden in 2020, the numbers have shifted more to Trump. So I'm not sure why the campaign is actually making or trying to make a dent in these red states.
Jeff, your quick response?
I'm going to quote the rock and roll group and say, desperado, you better come to your senses. And I think Joe Biden looks profoundly desperate. He might be looking at these other places just to raise money. But to be honest, he can't even look his way off of a stage. We've all seen him bumble and fumble after his speeches, when he gives a rally to 10 people. So when you talk about where he's looking, I don't think Joe Biden knows anywhere where he's looking. Now, his handlers have some kind of plan, but I think they're profoundly desperate.
Mike Leon and Ambassador Jeff Gunter, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
Officials in Washington today announced they finally reached a deal on government funding. This as we're almost halfway into the fiscal year. Now the race is on to pass the bills before a looming shutdown takes effect on Friday. The White House today released this statement saying We have come to an agreement with congressional leaders on the path forward for the remaining full-year funding bills. Congressional leaders confirmed the announcement. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that lawmakers are in the process of finalizing text and reports for Congress to closely review and consider ASAP. Once the bill's texts are finalized, the House gives congressional lawmakers 72 hours to review them. That's as funding for several key agencies run out at midnight on Friday, which threatens a shutdown of those agencies if the bills aren't passed by then. 2 retired U.S. generals testifying before the House Foreign Affairs Committee today as part of an investigation into the Biden administration's 2020-2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan and its consequences. Now, our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from the Capitol. Luis, what can you tell us about the hearing today?
Good evening, Jack. Yes, the House Committee on Foreign Affairs held a hearing for 4 hours, deposing former Joint Chief of Staff Chair, retired General Mark Milley, and the former head of Central Command, retired General Kenneth McKenzie. For General Milley, it was the first time testifying since he left active duty as the highest-ranking member of the U.S. Armed Forces last year. But during his opening statement and throughout his testimony, he reiterated that his assessment is that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a strategic failure. Let's listen to what General Mark Milley had to say.
On 14 August, the non-combatant evacuation operation decision was made by the Department of State, and the U.S. military alerted, marshaled, mobilized, and rapidly deployed faster than any military in the world could ever do. It is my assessment that that decision came too late.
The chairman of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, the Republican Congressman Michael McCaul, read the name of the 13 victims of the Abbey Gate terrorist attack on the 26th of August of 2021, the 13 servicemen who died there, a very emotional moment during today's hearing. Michael McCaul, the congressman leading the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, also highlighted how important our U.S. allies were during this process. Let's listen to what Congressman McCaul had to say.
On August 30th, 2021, more than 1,000 American citizens remained trapped in Afghanistan, as were tens of thousands of Afghan allies who risked their lives serving beside our troops and diplomats. Many, if not most, of those allies are still trapped, constantly in fear for their lives.
The Democratic ranking member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Congressman Gregory Meeks, had something very different to say than the Republican counterparts, and he pointed out the Trump administration is responsible for the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal from 2021. Let's listen to what ranking member Gregory Meeks had to say.
During the transition between the Trump and Biden administrations, it also became clear that the Trump administration lacked a comprehensive plan for withdrawing from Afghanistan, despite the May 1st deadline fast approaching.
Jack, so today's hearing lasted around 4 hours. I also got to speak with Congressman Mike Waltz, a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and he said that today's hearing was not about responsibility, who's responsible, but accountability, as who is to be held accountable for the disastrous events of August 2021. Back to you, Jack.
Luis, thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.